Late last year, Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg came under fire for his initial response to the accusation that Facebook was partly responsible for the results of the U.S. presidential election. Now, a small group of employees openly defied Zuckerberg by starting a task force to investigate Facebook's role in the dissemination of fake news. Now, in an article posted today on Recode, Kurt Wagner says this open defiance of Zuckerberg is rare at the company, and he's here to talk about why. Welcome back to the show, Kurt.
Hey, Megan, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for coming back on. So, unlike Apple, Facebook is not a secretive company when it comes to its employees. Can you tell us a little bit about how you think this works?
Yeah, so a lot of actually all the employees have access to kind of a beta version of the app. So if they want to, test products before they're pushed out to the masses, they can test them with their employee base. And then the story I wrote today was about these Q&As that Mark Zuckerberg has every Friday. With rare exceptions, unless maybe he's traveling abroad. He's pretty religious about these Q&As with the whole company. They broadcast it to people who are in offices outside of California. And folks get to ask him all kinds of questions. And he'll talk about products and he'll talk about strategy. And very little of that ultimately leaks and gets to people like me who like to report about it. And I thought it was fascinating. So I did my best to try and talk to people who used to work there and figure out what are these Q&As like. And that's what I wrote about today.
Yeah, I mean, you talk a little bit about how shame is involved. Like it's the corporate culture there is that you don't talk about the company, you don't leak to the company. As it seems at Apple, there's not the same sort of shame because we hear a lot of leaks. Does Apple and do other companies like Google have Q&A sessions like this every week?
Yeah, there are other companies that do. Google kind of started this from what I learned. They have something called TGIF, and I believe it's similar. It's kind of like an all-hands meeting. I don't know if it's quite as open in the sense of like people coming up to the microphone asking questions, but others, Twitter has these every couple of weeks. I believe Uber has something similar. I mentioned Nextdoor as being kind of a maybe lesser known social network in San Francisco that does something similar. But I think the shame thing is more, there is what I found surprising was that I assumed that there would be some really harsh penalties for leaking stuff. And there are. There's an example in the piece of a story leaking to the information about M, which is the artificial intelligent assistant that's in Messenger. And Mark Zuckerberg said, hey, we're going to find out who did this and we're going to fire this person. And they did. But I found what was surprising to me was that was not actually much of the deterrent to people. The deterrent was more, we don't want to let down our fellow Facebookers. You know, there's a pride of working here. There's a feeling of loyalty towards Zuckerberg that if you leak something, it's like you're betraying your company, your colleagues, and people will, you'll feel shame, you'll feel bad. And so I was kind of surprised that there was this unwritten, almost moral code there that what happens inside Facebook stays inside Facebook. And that's why we don't hear a lot of stuff early.
And I guess then the magical question is, what is Facebook doing differently to foster that kind of embrace of secrecy amongst employees? Because I think overall, I mean, yes, penalties is somewhat of a deterrent, but still information is going to get out regardless. But you really don't hear this about Facebook. And if people that are working at Facebook are that kind of, that feel that strongly about not letting these secrets get out, there's something in the water. Like there's something that Facebook is doing probably from the top down that is fostering this kind of dedication to the workplace. And I actually, now that I'm saying this, isn't Facebook usually on one of the lists of like the best places to work? I think it's near the top usually, so that's probably part of it.
Yeah, it's part of it. And I mean, these Q&As are a big part of it, right? When you have someone of Mark Zuckerberg's status, of his celebrity, and you get them to take an hour of their time every week to answer your questions openly and honestly, that's pretty cool, And I think that when he entrusts his employees with this information and he says, hey, I'm going to open up about Snapchat. Like, I don't do this publicly, but I'm going to do it with you because I trust you guys. That is a reason that a lot of people, they keep things to themselves. I mean, this story was, a lot of the folks I talked to for the story don't work at Facebook anymore, right? I mean, it's hard to get people who still work at the company to talk to you because of this very reason. I think they feel that they're entrusted with information from someone that they respect, and so therefore they take that really seriously. And I think that's not always the case at a lot of these companies. As they get bigger, the CEO gets further and further away from the rank and file, and I think clearly Mark Zuckerberg has found a way to kind of keep that small company mentality even as Facebook has grown.
Yeah, I mean, you write about how these other companies don't have a Zuckerberg. Like, that's why a lot of people work for Facebook because of him, whereas, Google doesn't have anybody at the top like that. Twitter doesn't. None of these big companies, Microsoft doesn't. I mean, I think Satya Nadella is inspiring, but not in the same way. He wasn't there from the beginning. Do you think that is changing now? I mean, with the task force that people came up with Zuckerberg's responses, his initial responses, which was just to say, oh no, Facebook had, it's silly to think that Facebook fake news had any influence. And then he sort of came around. Do you think things are changing there?
Well, I think it's hard to appease 16,000 people that are, one of the reasons that a lot of these folks go to work for Facebook is because they want to be able to speak their mind, right? They're presented this opportunity once a week to come up and ask whatever they want. They're used to kind of owning their own beliefs and political beliefs and social beliefs and things like that. And so I think what we saw here was, hey, Mark Zuckerberg may be able to get the vast majority of people to buy into whatever he says because they respect him, but there are going to be dissenters. What I found fascinating was when that happened and that story first came out, I started reaching out to people and I said, hey, this is crazy. I haven't heard of anything like this before. And employees were like, I can't believe that this happened. This is so crazy to have Facebook employees kind of defy Mark. That just doesn't happen at Facebook, or at least it hasn't happened. I would be surprised if this is the kind of thing we see a lot of. I think that people go to work there because they respect them. But clearly there was this election created a lot of animosity for a lot of people. And so I think it was probably a bit of a perfect storm. If we keep seeing this happen, though, then I think you have to be a little concerned, because what you don't want to do is get so big as a company that you lose that culture that made you unique or special. And I think up until now, Facebook's probably been able to do that. But, that's at least a small crack in that system. I don't know if it's going to become something bigger.
Maybe this is a little inside baseball, but I think I have a feeling we're talking to the right person to ask this question. Why does someone ultimately choose to leak company secrets? I realize that's there's probably many answers to that, but why would someone inside Facebook decide, I think I want to go tell someone about this M assistant, even though I know I'm not supposed to? What's the motivation?
It's actually a really good question, and one that I kind of ask myself too, right? As you meet people along the way and you build relationships, you kind of wonder, why do they talk? Why do they talk to me? Why do they talk to others? I think, I legitimately think a lot of people have good intentions, believe it or not. I don't think it's very common that someone says, hey, I know we're working really hard on this product. I'm going to go over and screw that up for everybody. Right. I think when you hear about CEOs that are doing things poorly, right? They're mismanaging, they're treating people unfairly. Well, then it's kind of obvious to realize why people would leak. But when things are going really good at Facebook, I think stuff comes out because it's almost accidental, right? Like people are either excited to talk about it, or they're almost as eager to find out what's going on as you are, and so it's almost like, hey, I'm hearing this. Like, have you heard something similar, right? And it kind of tips you off to certain things. But yeah, I certainly don't think people do it because they want to screw over their colleagues. That's not usually they're usually gone at the company by that point. But it is a good question, right? Because you wonder what are the benefits of doing this, and it's not always easy to connect those dots.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is often former employees. Like all of the trending news, that scandal from last year all came from former employees, disgruntled employees that had been hired as journalists and then let go.
And people who felt that the company was mishandling that too, right? Whether they were right or wrong, they clearly felt that Facebook had a role or responsibility that they were shirking, and so they said, hey, we're going to go ahead and expose this because we want it to change, right? And so that's a little bit more clear as to why someone would share that. But if you're happily working at a company, there's not often a lot of reasons to come to talk to the press and say things you're not supposed to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and some might obviously be accidental. I mean, I'm sure lots of people that work at Facebook, and it's almost Facebook's fault. Like I know two people that work at Facebook. I might not know that they work at Facebook if I wasn't connected with them through Facebook. It's like it connects you to all these people that you would have lost touch with otherwise. So yeah, I imagine that's something. I want to ask you a little bit about Mark Zuckerberg's not his resolution, but his goal for the year
Right.
of like talking to people. What do you make of that? Do you think he has political aspirations? And I mean, because you talk in the article about how he used to be such a horrible public speaker, but now speaking every week, he's really become something of a, a crowd pleaser.
Yeah, I think he's really improved as a public speaker. And when I first saw his, I guess it was an annual challenge, as how he says it. I mean, most of us would probably just call it a resolution. But when I first saw that, yeah, part of me was like, hey, this really does sound like a political, whistle stop tour, right? But I don't necessarily think that he's going to leave Facebook next year and go run for governor or something. I do. It sounds like maybe that because he left a loophole in the way that they restructured their stock so that he could pursue that someday. It sounds like maybe that's crossed his mind. What I think is that, the tone I took from his post was that it's been a really trying political year, or 2016 was very trying. I think a lot of folks in Silicon Valley realized, hey, we're probably not as in touch with other parts of the country as we'd like to think that we are. I think a lot of tech folks, definitely a lot of venture capitalists said, whoa, here are the things that we really thought were important, and it turns out they're not important to a vast majority of Americans. And I think Mark Zuckerberg probably had that same realization and said, if I'm building this platform for 1.8 billion people all around the world, I need to make sure that I know what they care about, what they want. And here's a good opportunity. It's probably good PR too, right? To go around all universities and small towns across America. Like, no one's really going to ding him for that, I guess, unless they say, hey, you should be spending more time in the office. But so I think for him, it's more of like, let's get outside this tech bubble, the Silicon Valley bubble, and learn about what my users actually want.
Well, Kurt, thank you so much for joining us. If anyone has any more interest in this, definitely read Kurt's article at Recode and all of his articles. And if you work for Facebook and you decided that you're not loyal and you don't feel shame, then tweet Kurt at KurtWagner8. And
even better than that, come tell me all the great things that you're working on, because that's what I'd love to hear about.
Yeah, right on.
All right. Thanks so much, Kurt.
Thanks.
Thank you,
Okay,
Kurt.
guys.
Have a good night.
Bye.